All right, hello, bonjour. I know it's been a long day for most of us, but I'm the last man standing between you and the wine and the drinks and all the fun this evening, so I'll try to keep it short and sweet. Let me start by giving a huge kudos and everything that went in behind today. So Jerome, Francois, Sasha, and all of those guys in pink shirts, you have been awesome, so thank you. Have you guys all enjoyed the day? Yeah. And I think Jen's been an awesome MC, so thank you, Jen. Okay, so last session, I won't keep you for too long, but I'm excited. I'm excited with all that I see. So let's talk about what maybe what we can do for you. So my name is Sam Basu. I am a developer advocate for Progress Software, which many of you guys may not have heard of Progress the way we are as a company, but hopefully you have heard or used some of the things that we make, like Fiddler and reporting solutions and testing solutions, and all of the UI controls and frameworks that we make across different platforms. So let's take a look at how development looks like from our lens, from our viewpoint, web, desktop, and mobile, and how we can kind of come to Uno Platform. Because again, like I said, we are convinced. I would like to think that when we do it right, we can have solid documentation, we can have polished UI, performant UI that works everywhere. So help me out so we can do this right. So let's take a look at the web stack first. And it's complicated because modern web dev it involves lots of moving pieces. So we are obviously Telerik. We make the Telerik line of products for all things .NET, not just web. But for web, because this is kind of where we started, ASP.NET. Anything you can do with ASP.NET, web forms, MVC, .NET Core, Blazor, WebAssembly. We heard a lot about WebAssembly today. You can do all of that. We provide UI. Then there is Kendo UI for the JavaScript folks in the room. This is where kind of I started. It was just a simple library based on jQuery. And now I have a hard time explaining because we have had to rediscover Kendo UI like 4 times over. That's how complicated web is. We now make components for Angular, React, and Vue. So we're not holding back developers. You can bring your platforms however you want, whichever SPA framework you want. Now, while all of this modern web with JavaScript is going strong, I tend to side with victims in the past. I have spent like 3 years on Windows Phone. Anybody have a Windows Phone? Yeah, there you go. Lots of folks in this room. And I spent 2 years on Silverlight, and I missed this. We all know the story. Steve Jobs wrote that open scathing letter against Flash, and plugins were not meant to do what they were doing. But those of us who did Silverlight, we missed this dev experience, like the XAML and C#, tools that just work. So could we have some of it back? And the answer is obviously yes with WebAssembly. Thankfully, this is not owned by any person or company. It's an open standard, so everybody is on board. Safari is kind of grudgingly on board as well, which is interesting to see. So that's all the web stuff. And WebAssembly, like we heard all day today, this is exciting because this is going to take a lot of languages and be able to compile them down to WebAssembly. And the performance, the AOT, and the partial things that Miguel was talking about, it's going to keep getting better and better. Desktop, right? You kind of hear this term legacy apps, but it's running your enterprise. It's not legacy. So next Monday, you're going to see .NET Conf for Microsoft, and .NET Core 3 is coming. And this is good news, because like we make components for WPF and WinForms. Those sell a lot because people are using them. And all of those apps can now be brought over to .NET Core 3, be modernized with newer APIs. So all that is good. Now, desktop, there are more ways to do this. You know about UWP, obviously, and everything that you do with Uno Platform, this is what you're using. This is the rendering mechanism. And UWP runs everywhere. It's not just for tablets. It's for desktops and Surface Hubs and HoloLens. WinUI is going to make things better. So all of that is going strong. We make a suite of products or controls called UI for UWP. This is our bet for all things UWP, and this was part of our goodwill with Microsoft. We actually open sourced this whole thing. So this entire suite, probably about 30 or so controls, it's entirely free and open source. You can use that. So that's that. And then some more exciting things. This is from Apple. Next iteration of Mac OS X, they are starting to run iOS apps on the desktop, right? So these iOS apps can be written with Xamarin Forms, with Uno, right? So you have multiple ways of bringing your XAML and C# goodness back to the desktop. So I think that's exciting. Let's talk about mobile. And again, I mean, we are all .NET developers here, but again, there's lots going on in the JavaScript space as well. we maintain a very, very popular open source library called NativeScript. So if you are doing anything JavaScript, anything of a SPA framework, this is kind of a no-brainer because it helps you code share between web and mobile. And this is straight up JavaScript native. It's actually very similar to what Xamarin Forms does. So you write up a UI, we turn around and we render native UI components on iOS, Android, and other platforms. And you can do it with Angular, you can do it with Vue. So if you're doing SPA type stuff with JavaScript, choose a JavaScript framework because the tooling is plenty rich and you can code share better. But we obviously are .NET, and we want to talk about Xamarin, because again, Xamarin has come a long, long way, thanks to Miguel and James and their entire team. The tooling used to be painful, even 5, 6 years back, and things are improving. The dev loop that Jerome keeps talking about, that's getting faster and faster every day. So all good news, Xamarin iOS, Xamarin Android, Xamarin Forms, things are evolving. What we do, and this is what I spend a lot of my time with, is a suite of controls for Xamarin. Right? And there are multiple things going on here, so I'd like to break this down. So again, these are things that we are known for, the graphs, the charts, the side drawers, the things that are difficult to do for developers. And again, we are not the only ones doing it, so please don't reinvent the wheel. Grab some UI that helps you ship your apps faster. Okay, so Uno, like I said, we have seen this, the architecture diagram. This is fantastic because what you're doing is really cross-platform, iOS, Android, and WASM. And when you talk about desktop, like there are other things you can do, like with PWAs. You can bring it all into an Electron shell and run it, and there is nothing stopping you. So what can we do? Okay, everything that you see here is experimental. So don't do this in production. This is just a couple of us playing around because we are excited with the Uno, and the Uno engineers are helping. So let me show you a couple of things and how we can come here. Okay, so first up is, if you can see my screen, yes. So this is our UI for Xamarin Suite. So let's talk about Xamarin, and then let's talk about UWP. If you notice here, we have a couple of different things going on. When we talk about Xamarin, we have 3 different flavors of controls. Some controls are purely native, iOS and Android. We used to have native libraries, which, again, not a lot of people use those things, so we still have the controls, we just use wrappers. So we give you wrappers for iOS, Android, and Xamarin Forms. And then we have some Xamarin Forms-specific controls, which use custom renderers. And then, compared to, or kind of in line with what Jerome was showing, we have probably 6 to 8 controls that we paint with Skia Sharp. So again, all the work that Uno is doing with Skia and extending it and making it work everywhere, we can ride that wave because we literally pull up a canvas and then we paint pixels with Skia. So all of that is going to start working. So let me show you a couple of quick things here. So I'm in Visual Studio here. This is a solution which is using the Uno template, the Visual Studio extension. I'm on a Mac. I just ported it over from Windows machine. Things work. And let me go ahead and run this thing real quick for you. So that's the Android emulator coming up. Things have gotten faster. This Android emulator used to take like 10 minutes to come up. They have worked on this. Okay, that what you see is a native Telerik Android chart or graph or line graph, whatever. So let's stop this one here, and I'm going to change one line of code here. I know the code is too small here, which I'll go into in a second, just to kind of show you a sample of what's possible. And we're going to run this again. I'm the last session, so I can keep you for 2 hours while this builds. They clearly saved the worst for the last. Are you done? Yes. And that's a calendar, right? So these are native controls that we have, and we can make them work through Uno, because Uno doesn't get in the way, because we can do this all day long. So here is the same thing, and let me flip the startup project here, and we're going to hit run. While that's coming up, so essentially what's happening here is we have the shared project, which is really a shared project. It has some pros and cons. Your builds are faster because you're not pulling in libraries directly into the platform-specific things. You're building it for iOS, for Android. But since this is truly a shared project, you do end up with a little bit of if-else in your code behind. And you can also do this in XAML. So this is fast. The builds are fast. And this is iOS. And when it comes up, that's another, just a default chart that comes up. And all of this, again, is through Uno. This is the Uno solution that you're seeing, except that we are rendering native UI. So you'll see that there's some if-else here for Android. And for Android, we're using Java utilities, and we're painting a chart. And then for iOS, I'm also painting a chart. And I can also do the calendar for iOS. So that's just the native side of the story. And if you look at what we have, it's quite a bit of controls here. If I go into iOS, probably 24 or so controls, they will all start working on Uno because they're all native. Now, the Skia Sharp ones, again, we have to do a little bit of work to make sure they work seamlessly. Now, let's talk about the UWP stack, because this is also what we do. And like I said, all of this is it's free, and it's open source for you to use. So how is that going to work out? So if I go into my Windows machine, if it is up, looks like it is, and I'm going to hit play or run and see if it works. So this is a UWP application, and what you see is just a smattering of UWP controls. And obviously this works because Uno is UWP, so this is native. So you can grab any of our UWP controls, slap it on your UWP project, and it'll start working. So essentially what you see here is in my Universal Windows Platform directory, I am referencing Telerik UI for Universal Windows Platform, as compared to the Visual Studio one that I showed you. This one here, if you look at the iOS project here, this one is referring UI for Xamarin, right? So there are multiple ways in which we can come to this. We can reuse some of the Xamarin thing and also do UWP. Now, one of the interesting things, and we were trying to get this to work, still early days. So what Jerome showed you, the Xamarin forms, the WASM renderers for Xamarin forms, and I was working with Jeffrey. So this is very exciting because we can take, we have to do some tree shaking to make sure we don't have like assemblies that have native dependencies, but otherwise we can take Xamarin forms UI and throw it on WASM directory through what Uno is doing. Now, one of the things that is going to come right away in our attempt to get this to work on WASM is on an iOS or an Android project, I can bring in our NuGet packages, which is for our Xamarin Forms things. But for WASM, I can't quite bring it in because it's meant to run on a target UAP or Windows 10 device. So we'll have to do some manipulation, change the target frameworks around, and then we can bring it in as a NuGet package. And again, Jerome and his team have already done some work on this. So if I go up here, here's a GitHub repo. This is out on Uno Platform. It's for UWP stuff, which is all open source. So what essentially has been done is, if I pull this up here, this is a WASM application, and it's showing you all of the UWP controls that we have. Some of them are starting to work. If I, for example, show you the calendar here, so this is a UWP calendar, again, running on WASM. And essentially what's being done here is if I show you the, like you can download this and play with it. So if I go into our controls directory, and if you look at like the input control, which is what this one was, the calendar control, if I grab any of these directories and see what's going on, this is essentially what we are doing. We are changing the target framework to not just UAP, but also include Net Standard 2.0. So that way you can reference that inside of a WASM project and start lighting it up, right? So again, what I'm saying is there are lots of ways in which we can come to this, and obviously I'm excited, and I need a little bit of your help. So if there is one thing all of you can do for me once you go back home today, is next Monday morning I have a call with our PMs to kind of get them to do this right. So I sent this thing out. It's a quick poll. So go ahead and please vote this up. We already have hundreds of votes, but I would like to get more, so I can show them that, hey, this is what we want to do, and do it right. Be it Xamarin Forms, be it UWP, we want our controls to be working nicely and performant, and give you the docs and the support that you need to be successful. All right, so that is all that I heard. And again, I mean, we have seen a lot of things today, and these are exciting times. And this is one of the slides that Microsoft uses, and it's exciting how much ammunition we have as software developers to build amazing things, right? So let's go change the world. Thank you so much for sitting through in the last 15 minutes, and you can find me online on any of the social hubs through that handle. And again, thank you so much. I have lots of stickers if you want to grab, but again, that's all I had. So back to you, Jen.
Spectacular.